Alright, this is a supply and demand problem with unit taxes. So I'm going to do it kind of the long way. In my opinion, the easiest way to do problems like this is to keep a visual representation of what it is that you're doing. So we have a supply curve that's given to be 2p minus 260. And we have a demand curve that's 1900 minus 4p. So then the first question is to find the equilibrium price. So that's here. This is price on this axis, quantity over here. Okay, so the way you do this is, step one, you write the definition. So the equilibrium price is defined to be the price where quantity demanded equals quantity supplied. Setting these two things equal to each other, quantity demanded is 1900 minus 4p equals the quantity supplied, which was 2p minus 260. Adding 260 to both sides, I get 2160 equals 6p. Dividing through by 6, I get the equilibrium price is 360. So this number right here is 360, and that goes here. Then it asks the equilibrium quantity without the tax. Well, the equilibrium quantity, I'm going to use a new piece of paper because I'm going to get crowded, but the equilibrium quantity is defined to be the quantity demanded or the quantity supplied, either one, at the equilibrium price. So my advice to you is to pick the one that seems the easiest, that seems like the supply curve. So I'm going to write QS equals 2 times P minus 260. I'm just copying it down. Now I'm going to plug in the equilibrium price, which we found to be 360. So that is 2 times 360 minus 260. So I get an equilibrium quantity of 460. It seems like a big number, but I guess that's right. 460. I can check my work because remember, it's the quantity demanded or the quantity supplied, either one. So I've checked it from the quantity supplied. So now I will check it from the quantity demanded. So it would be 1900 minus 4 times the equilibrium price, which was 360. And I get 460, so I must be good. Now, to find the price after the tax, you have to consider what the tax does. And this tax is like a cost, an extra cost of business. Just like the business has labor costs and raw material costs and so forth, it now has a new cost of the tax. So the supply curve shifts up by the amount of the tax. And the new equation is QS tax, which is equal to 2p minus 380. So the technique of finding the new equilibrium price, which we're calling the price consumers pay, is exactly the same as before. You just set the quantity demanded equal to the quantity supplied. So the quantity demanded is no different. It was 1900 minus 4p equals the quantity supplied, which is now 2p minus 380 because we got a different supply equation. So let's see. 1900 plus 380 gives me 2280. And I'm going to add the 4p to both sides. It gives me 6p. Dividing through by 6. I get a new equilibrium price of 380. 380. So that's this number right here. 380. And then it's going to ask for the new equilibrium quantity, and we find it just like we did before. We just have different equations now. So let's see, this number was 380, the price consumers pay. Okay, so the next question, number 4, is kind of difficult to find. So the easiest way to do it is to first find the equilibrium quantity, which I will do now. So the equilibrium quantity is defined to be the quantity demanded or the quantity supplied at the equilibrium price, right? So I'll use a demand curve this time. So let's see, the quantity demanded was 1900 minus 4p, so that would be 1900 minus 4 times the equilibrium price, and in this case the equilibrium price is 380. So that would be 380 times 4, all subtracted from 1900. So I get a new equilibrium quantity of 380. It's kind of a coincidence that it's the same number. And so I'm going to check, make sure I have it right. I solved that by using the demand equation. Now I'll try it with using the supply equation. So it should be QS is equal to 2 times the equilibrium price, which was 380, minus 380. And I can see already that that's correct. So the equilibrium quantity is 380. Now notice I didn't ask that on the test, but what I've asked for is the price producers receive after the tax. First you need to see where that is in the picture. So this is the price that consumers pay, right? But of course the producer has to give up the tax, which is this thing right here. And since those supply curves are parallel to each other, that tax, which we're showing right here, is exactly the same as this distance right here. It's kind of important that you be able to see that. So even though the producer gets the 380 into their cash register, at the end of the day the government comes to collect the tax, which leaves the producer with this number over here. So that's the number we're trying to find. Now it's difficult to find, but in my opinion the easiest way to find it is to realize we have this point. See this point right here on the original supply curve, and we have an equation that describes that point, this black supply equation here. So we can solve for P, and here's how. We take the, I'm going to go back to the black marker. So we take that supply equation, which was QS is equal to 2P minus 260. In this case, we know what the quantity supplied is. It was 380. Remember, it was this number right here, 380. So 380 equals 2p minus 260. And now I'm going to let that equation just solve for the p value for me. So I'm going to take the 380. I'm going to add 260 to both sides. So that means on the left side I now have 640 equals 2p. Now I'm going to divide through by 2. And I get p is 320. So this number down here is 320. So the next question is, well, what was the unit tax? Well, now that's pretty easy to see, isn't it? Because consumers paid 380, producers got, after the tax, 320, so the unit tax must have been 60. I didn't ask it, but I could have asked how much money does the government actually collect from this tax. And the government collects $60 times how many units were sold. And remember now, the number of units sold would be only 380. So it would be $60 times 380 would give you the total amount of money that the government collected from this tax. Then in the second part, these are little discussion questions. It says, if you look at the problem above, you will notice that the burden of the tax is not shared equally by both consumers and producers. Who pays more of the tax and why? Well, in this case, let's see, producers have given up $40, haven't they? Because they used to get $360, and now they only get $320. So they've given up $40, and consumers used to pay $360, but now they have to pay $380. So consumers have given up $20. So in this particular example, it looks like producers have paid more. Now, who pays more really depends on the slopes of the two curves, and that has to do with elasticity that we haven't covered yet. Now, part B is kind of a thought experiment. It seems obvious that a higher tax will yield more tax revenue, but this is not always true. Sometimes a higher tax will yield less tax revenue. Explain why. Well, there are a lot of ways to think about it. The easiest way is to imagine that you let the tax get higher and higher and higher, and what begins to happen is that consumption falls. See, as this supply curve moves up and to the left, the equilibrium quantity falls, and eventually people will buy so little that even if the tax is quite large, the amount of money collected will be very small. You know, take it to an extreme case and you can really see. Imagine that we put a tax, say, on soft drinks, and first the tax was a nickel on every soft drink, and then somebody said, oh, that's not enough money, let's raise it to 10 cents, and then a year or two later somebody said, that's not enough money, let's raise it to $1. But can you imagine that if you put a tax of, say, $100 on a soft drink, even though the tax is quite large, sales would probably be zero and no money would be collected. Okay, I hope you found that helpful. Good luck.